The right to offend is not some pesky little part of freedom of speech that we have to put up with. It is the heart and soul and lungs of freedom of speech. It is the coursing lifeblood of human progress. It is the instigator of liberty and modernity and science and understanding. What a laughing stock today's student leaders are, that they can so casually dismiss the right to be offensive without realizing that their lovely, enlightened lives are the gift of individuals who gave offense. Offensiveness is not just something we have to begrudgingly accept. Offensiveness is the motor of human progress.
Now broadcasting from the Right to Offend Media Studios in sunny South Florida, bringing you the latest in politics, current events, art, and pop culture. This is the Whitfield Report Live with Sam Whitfield.
But giving offense is good. In fact, it's essential.
Alrighty, everyone, and welcome to this week's Monday edition of the Whitfield Report. I'm your host, Sam Whitfield, recording here from Right to Offend Media Studios, and we're actually recording this on Good Friday, but, you know, that's how we do the Monday shows. We always pre-record them. And this week's guest is a gentleman who, once again, I've been wanting to talk to for a while, and we finally got our schedules synced up. Mr. Richard Maverick of the Losers series is joining me. You guys may remember on Instagram a few weeks ago, I opened up this patch and this challenge coin, which I always really, it's neat when authors can send these out, so I really enjoyed them. And Richard's a great guy. He writes in the military thriller genre, a bit like I do, and like a lot of other authors, who we travel with. And he's also just an interesting guy in general from what I've, gotten to know him. Richard, welcome to the Whitfield Report, sir. Been wanting to do this for a while, and I'm happy to have you on. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm thankful to be on. Thanks for having me. Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good on this, like you said, Good Friday for the Monday show.
Yeah. So, and nice bookshelves, by the way. We were talking about that before the show. So, real quick though, just kind of in general, what is your background, and how did you get started writing?
I spent a brief time in the military, about 18 months in the Army Reserves. But I grew up in the military surplus business. I spent the better part of 30 years alongside my dad doing that. And it wasn't actually until after my daughter was born that I remembered I still had one dream left, and that was to be an author. And I decided to put pen to paper because, quite frankly, I can't convince her to pursue her dreams if I never pursued one of my own. So
yeah, that's that's always a good motivation to pursue your own dreams, is just to motivate your kids. What is the military surplus business like? I know a little bit, but not much about it. So
I did a lot of gun shows, setting up on a Friday, tearing down Sunday. Selling throughout the weekend. We had various surplus stores, had a gun store at one point. Excuse me. Now that I'm more full-time post office dad, who retired, as he likes to say, he's been getting even bigger into the surplus stuff, legitimately buying thousands of pounds of stuff at a shot.
Interesting.
Yeah, it has been, and it's been interesting to grow up in it, to see, things change from the way things were in the early 90s till, the way things changed after the global war on terror, to how much they changed from the beginning to the end of that, for that matter. So
yeah. So you mentioned that you started writing because you wanted to inspire your daughter, which I think is admirable. But I mean, as far as the thriller genre itself, what drove you, to write in this genre? Was that something that you grew up with, or something that you
Nope.
discovered later on, or?
Um, the truth of it is, I actually stopped reading. This is something that can be found in the first edition of Volume 2. I actually stopped reading around the age of 10. I have a very active imagination. And for years and years, behind the wheel of the van on the way to a gun show, whether it was Cleveland or North Carolina or Michigan, and I would tell myself a story. I've always been kind of big in the idea of being ready for any scenario, and it doesn't necessarily mean civil conflict. I live in Western New York, and this past Thanksgiving we got 4 freaking feet of snow in one day. Okay,
Oof, yeah.
so the idea of being ready, it applies to every faction of life. Um, but I always had this thought that we could see ourselves in a societal breakdown scenario. And that was a story that I told myself over the years. And I told myself that story so many times that I said, you know what, I should write some of this down. And that's where the first Our War came from, was a lot of telling myself this story, how it starts, when, that sort of stuff. So,
So, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me like you said you stopped, kind of reading on 10, and then you started, telling yourself stories. So it seemed to me very, very similar to me. You got bored with what was kind of out there, so you just started creating your own stories
so
then.
the reason I quit reading, I was reading a book, The Navy by Roger Jewett. And there was a scene in the book that was a little bit too mature for a 10-year-old. And I read it to my buddies on the bus, and we were all giggling because it was about boobies. And
Yeah.
my older sister overheard me. I don't remember which one, but one of my older sisters overheard me reading this to my buddies. They went home and told Dad. Dad took the book away from me, and I took it maybe more harsh than I should have. So I stopped reading, and I wrote the first Our War, the first edition, and it was very raw. And I was told by a few readers that you saw me develop as a writer as the book went on. And it was after I was done writing the book and before I published it, a friend of mine reached out and he's like, dude, you got to check out Jack Carr on Joe Rogan. You got to listen to that, blah, 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 blah. So I finally sat down and listened to it, and Jack explained how instrumental reading was to becoming an author. And I bought his books, and me being me, I'm like, oh, I'm going to get hardcovers because, $75-$80 later, right? And Savage Son had just come out, so I got the first 3. And I remember thinking, wow, these are going to be really expensive showpieces, And I read them all in less than a month.
Wow.
And then I remember him talking about how Brad Thor was instrumental, good Lord, to getting him published. So I'm like, I want to read Brad Thor. And all of a sudden I blew my now ex-wife bought me the first 7 or 8 books, and I blew through the first 4 in another month and a half. And I started just one after the other. By the time I released volume 2, I had blown through 22 novels.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now, I remember looking at the original Our War and saying, wow, this is not, Jack Carr.
Right.
And I thought, you know what, maybe I should go back and I should adjust things. But where I was, um, quite frankly, I probably never would have published the first book had I stopped the motion I was in
Yeah.
and tried to correct things. So with volume two, with the original second edition of volume two, you saw everything I learned over 22 novels. And you saw it from the very first page. And as I'm working on volume three now, and I'm doing the corrections for the second edition of volume two, um, volume three is in and of itself a completely unique creature compared to even the first two.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that too. And it's interesting that uh I kind of believe that, at least for me personally, and it seems like for you too, uh for me, reading these thrill novels was kind of the best teacher as far as how writing goes, because like you, when I was growing up, I stopped I stopped reading, but for me it was more because, like, when I was in middle and high school, I was forced to read like all these books for
Oh,
school. So
yeah.
then because of that, like, I was like, well, I don't really want to read much, on my own time, which, I mean, now as an adult, like, that's changed a bit. But I remember, uh, I took a gap year between high school and college, and during that time, a friend of mine turned me on to Vince Flynn, um, who writes the Mitch Rapp series. This was back in like 2013 when I first got into his books. And I got an Audible subscription because, I kind of figured, well, if I'm going to be reading these thick books, having the audiobooks would be helpful too. So I did that. And I read throughout the time, like, I want to say it took me like a whole year, but I read basically all of Vince's books, or, listened to them when I could and whatnot. And I thought, wow, I really want to kind of, this inspires me. I'd written kind of short stories as a kid, kind of based off of, like, James Bond and whatnot, but it motivated me to kind of start writing, uh, again during my gap years. I did that, but this was during like 13, 14-ish, and self-publishing was it was still kind of looked down upon.
Hmm.
So then when I started college, I kind of put writing on hold again, just because I was actually a writing major. And so, again, how much writing do you want to do, in your free time when you already have to do?
So much for school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but during that time, like 2018, that was when The Terminal List first came out, and nobody knew who Jack Carr was. But I at that point, I knew Ryan Stack, who writes, he runs the Real Book Spy, and I also knew at that point Eric Bishop, friend of both ours, and both of them had. I think Ryan knew Jack before Eric did, if I'm remembering correctly. But people were saying that, Jack Carr is going to be the next Clancy, which I was skeptical of, because who could replace Clancy, right?
Right.
But that first Terminalist book, I think, is still one of the best revenge thrillers out there, and I definitely remember thinking, like, okay, after I graduate, this is something I'm going to want to pursue again. And so, like you, I kind of did, and just from like reading all of the thrillers, I kind of took what I learned much like you did and just kind of applied what I had learned. And, you know, my first book isn't perfect either, but I think the thing about this is you kind of learn as you go too, and there's no, you know, no one's first book is perfect, or
Yeah.
you know, or it's rare when your first book really does well, which mine actually did, despite all the flaws. But I find it interesting because no matter how many quote unquote writing courses you take, there, you know, and whatnot, there's nothing quite like you know, publishing the first one and then just
Yeah.
throwing it into the wild. So
The original Our War was legitimately a published rough draft.
yeah,
But I look at the lead because I knew then what I knew then, like I thought Microsoft Word was correcting things and it wasn't. Um,
yeah,
and I got the Grammarly software off the recommendation from an old friend, and it did better to say the least. But it was still pretty rough. But like I said, had I stopped and tried to make it even better, I wouldn't have. I don't believe I would have gotten it off the ground like I did. Through the first one, that's how I met Eric Bishop. And I have subsequently met numerous authors. You know, over time, yourself, Zach James. I've had chats with Joe Goldberg, Steve Stratton, Jake Widmer. We've had actually him and I have had several conversations. Got one of his sitting somewhere up here. A couple of his actually, but one that I'm cracking open later this evening, his newest one.
yeah,
Um,
which I just finished, by the way, and it's fantastic.
yeah,
He's
I'm
also
I'm looking forward to it.
like Jake is like one of my biggest hype men, and I mean that in like a really great way too. He's, I mean, everyone in that Discord is, but he and I just like really clicked from
Yeah,
the moment we you know, first encountered. So
I'm
and
trying to be more active in the group, and it's just time, time.
yeah, it's tough. I mean, part of the whole thing for me, and I'm sure you can relate to this too, is writing the book is one thing, but like doing social media, and this is coming from like from a guy who, I mean, I majored in technical writing in college, but a lot of that has to do with like marketing and communication. So
Hmm.
even from a marketing and communications guy, like there's a lot of, I mean, the algorithm on social media is
Yeah,
just always changing, and it's a pain in the ass to kind of keep up with, especially like, you know, the big thing that I guess like, you know, Bookstagram or whatever you want to call wants to see is like, you know, fantasy stuff or like erotica, you know, type
yeah.
thrillers. Neither of which like I write, and
Nope.
so it's an uphill battle, you know, constantly. So
Yeah, it seems to be an uphill battle with the algorithms regarding Amazon and stuff like that too. You know, you
yeah.
gotta hit so many reviews in order to beat the algorithm. And it, like you said, but you put it best, uphill battle all the way.
Yeah, well that's the other thing too, is like I've had so many people, and I really like, you know, it means a lot. I have a lot of people who, you know, family and friends who will buy the book, and then I'll get a text and they'll be like, you know, dude, I love the book, and I'm like, thank you. Please, you know, leave a review on
Yeah,
on Amazon, because, you know, like it means a lot to me that you're, you know, complimenting me directly, but I need, you know, people to see the reviews so that, you know, uh, so that it gets more traction. Well, one thing you mentioned off air, and I don't know like really how to segue this, but like you've had a interesting journey like getting these things published,
Yes.
from what you've told me.
So
And you've
the original the original two books I did through a self-publishing outfit. They do it for you. And if you don't know what you're doing, you spend an excessive amount of money, which I did. So the first book cost me well over $3,000 to make happen. We were discussing, like you said, off air. We talked about the Atticus software, which is probably the exact same thing they charge. I we paid what 147 or something for the software
yeah,
itself, and they charged me at the other place. Again, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, so to pay the money then made sense. Now it's like, okay, now I know better. But they charged me $1,000 for format, just to format the book.
yeah, I know. I get, messages from, those accounts like saying, "Hey, we'll offer you formatting services
Mm,
starting only at $500."
yeah, right.
So,
And they're using the same software you and I are,
yeah,
you know. And the second book, I ditched the marketing portion because I got the marketing with the first book, but you still had to pay to design. You still had to pay for it. So
right.
I paid for it, but you still have to pay for it. So that was a little weird. So I didn't end up taking advantage of that. And with the second book, I still shelled out the money, but I got more books um, for hitting the ground running when the book came out. Um, and the cost of books was extremely high. And then, life kind of got in the way and changed, and I didn't get out and market the second book really at all. So actually sat kind of dormant now for about 2 years, working on a psychological thriller that I finished up in November. That is um, that I am and will continue to seek traditional publication for. Um, and many people, many fans of the first two books kept reaching out. Hey, dude, when are you going to get the third one out? When are you going to get the third one out? Okay, well, I'm going to do that. But now's that chance. Now's that opportunity for the corrections in book one. Hence, second edition, volume one.
Yeah,
And working on volume two right now, which is very, very little changes that are going to be made to volume two. As I write volume three, which again, as I said earlier, is a huge shift even from the other two books.
yeah. I mean, it sounds like it is interesting though because you're the second author I know, and I'm the other one who, you're doing a second edition of your first draft and of your first book, and for me, that book was actually my first one, Shadows of Deception, and that was mainly because I reformatted it in Atticus
Hmm.
and cleaned up a bunch of it because I was using Word and then also using Amazon's like free formatting software, which is decent, but it's not great.
Hmm.
And if you don't know what you're doing the first time, like I like I didn't, it kind of does its own thing. Whereas like Atticus does like a better job of showing you what you're going to get, so that really helps um, things. What would you say has been your biggest, I don't know, like moment of triumph so far? What are you feeling like the best about right now? And then what would you say is your biggest struggle, as far as like
Struggle is struggle's the easy one, because it's focus. because I get up, most mornings I try to get up 4:30, 5 o'clock, and I come out. I've got a little workstation set up over here for the computer. It's all it sits there, computer, my pile of notebooks and pens, and I sip my coffee and I start in. Sometimes my mind doesn't let me start in because the
Yeah.
event of yesterday or oh, shit, this could happen in 6 months, man. I need to think about that. No, I don't. Um, and it does. It takes up a lot of crap that shouldn't, just lives rent free in my head all day. So sitting down to write, I have to focus on when I'm driving around in the mail truck. I gotta, I'm dealing with these problems, and I said, no, that shit can wait. Focus on the next chapter. Focus there. And then I'm stuck at a certain spot, and I'm trying to focus on it, and I wound up thinking about something I'm going to do 3 chapters from now instead. And I got to say, no, go back to this, get back over there. So it's a constant struggle for me to focus on what I need to focus on now.
Yeah. I can definitely relate because like I'm working on my 4th book in the Shadows of Deception saga right now. But like my brain, parts of it are like already focusing on what's going to happen in like book 5 and 6. And
Yes.
I'm like, I'm like, dude, why are you thinking 2 books ahead? You need to finish and get this one out. But I think that's kind of how our brains work, especially if you're working on a series like,
Yeah.
like we do.
Yeah. I found myself thinking about stuff for volume 4 this morning. I'm like, man, I ain't even that far yet. Stop it.
Yeah. So, well, and then the other thing too is like, and this is something that has kind of helped me, but like I'll have ideas, and if I don't get them down somewhere, I'll forget them later.
Yes.
So I've started to do is like I have a uh I have like a little folder on the notes app on my phone where I just jot down, you know, some ideas, and some of them are totally like, that they might seem crazy at the time, and I don't always remember them. So then later when I go and look at them, some of them I remember, and I'm like, oh yeah, I know exactly what this is for. Some of them I'm like, what's this? I don't remember, what, and so that definitely has been, helpful for me too,
Helpful.
as far as writing. But yeah, I mean, I think like you,
I've done the same with the app. It's a little easier to pull over at a mailbox right now and get phone up and jot something down real quick
yeah,
than it was carrying a notebook around and then remembering where you put that notebook. So you grab a different notebook, and now you've got notes scattered throughout 7. I literally have 7 notebooks sitting over by my computer right now,
wow,
and there's notes for just everything I've written so far, between the psychological thriller and volume 3 and giveaway stuff. Like the coin design is written down in one of the notebooks. Um, but it's all scattered. It's all mixed up, where the phone makes it a little bit more contained.
yeah. Well, the other thing just, kind of that's helped me is, and I know that there are people in the, I know there are people in the author community and in the publishing community who, you know, have kind of, they've declared me like excommunicado or whatever. But like ChatGPT, at least for me, has been very helpful as far as like organizing
Hmm.
stuff. And I know that there's big resistance towards AI from the writing community, and some of that I understand. but some of it I think is just people. It's I think there are people like editors who want to overcharge a bit, who are getting nervous because it can do a lot of the same stuff they do for like $20 a month instead of
Yeah.
$1,000. So it's very helpful because I can put my ideas and even some of my drafts in there, and it does a pretty good job of like keeping track of my ideas and whatnot, and editing it. But that's all
Hmm.
I really use it for. I don't really, I don't necessarily use it as like to write the book for me, as some people,
Hmm.
say. I mean, what it's basically doing is the same thing that an editor,
Is
is
doing for
doing.
you. Yeah, only
I
less
guess.
expensive.
Yeah.
I did get, and that was something that you asked accomplishments. My biggest accomplishment thus far was the first book to begin with.
Yeah.
Um, but going through now we're at second editions. My biggest accomplishment at this point is the second edition, quite frankly, of Volume One. And making the changes and getting the editor for that one. John Stamp recommended his editor to me, and she did a marvelous job. And I think, she sent it back. Hey, if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. And I went through and I clicked on pretty much everything that there was not big changes needed. Um, so
That's
to
always.
to have an editor this time around at a reasonable price point was like
Yeah.
patting myself on the back over that. So, because that was something that scared me away from the idea. That's why I thought Grammarly would be the end all be all for the original Our War, because at the time I looked at editors and it was going to cost me almost another $2,000 just to edit the book. So it was scary when you're trying to do this by yourself.
One of them wanted to charge me like $2,000, and like my books are, like, I consider them novels, but like technically I guess you could consider them novellas.
Mhm.
But even for like, my little book, my book series, which is like, maybe 100 to maybe like 180 to 200 pages per pop. Some people on like, Fiverr and whatnot were,
Yeah.
wanting to charge, you know, like 1,000 or 2,000, and then, you know, like like some of them I'm like, was it, are they really going to even make that much you know, of a difference? So, and plus, like, since I do editing as like a living too, like that's the other thing too, is like I kind of know what like a reasonable rate would be, and some of these people I
Yeah.
think they like to take indie authors for a ride, unfortunately. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with
uh,
that.
yeah. So you mentioned, so you have one series that you've published independently, and then you have another that you're trying to, go through like a traditional publishing,
Yes.
for.
Yes. I wrote that over the last, well, yeah, it was about 2 years. Pieces here, pieces there, and um, doing the single dad stuff. And of course, my daughter comes first, and it's okay. I need to sit down and write a little bit, and sometimes it's a week or two in between sitting down and writing. And so I worked on that slowly, and it is. I think it's extra special. I really do. Um,
Yeah.
and I think it deserves an audience that self-publishing cannot give it, which is why I'm going to hold out at least a year before and get all the query letters I can out um, until somebody picks it up, or I ultimately get it edited and self-published.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that there's anything wrong with, going for like self-publishing or traditional publishing. I definitely think, though, it is interesting because, like talking to Eric Bishop, like he's, he had the unique experience with the Body Man, with that first one um, you know, of traditionally publishing. And in fact, the very first time I had him on my podcast was when he first published The Body Man, and it was traditionally published, and I was rooting for him then, and I think it did fairly well. But then when he told me that his publisher didn't want the second book, I was like, why? Like, are they crazy? And so it is a bit weird like that, because you can have a really good, like, you can have a really good novel, you can have a really good, two or three of them, and then for whatever reason, the
They say
publishers
no to the
just,
next one. Yeah.
yeah. So,
The book is titled Meet the Monster, and it is written it is written as a standalone, but can be a series. And I've got notes anyways for the second book. I've been so focused with volume 3. I know if I stop and and focus on trying to get any of those notes fulfilled, I'm going to be further out with volume 3, and people are getting a little antsy on that one. So
yeah, no, I understand how that goes. Kind of with your writing process, then, are you more of like, do you do outlines, or are you more of like a pantser, like I am, or is it a mix of the
it's
two,
it's
I guess?
it's kind of a mix of everything, because I have notes like we were discussing on my phone of the next 5, 6 chapters. This is the big bullet point for the next chapter, so now we got to get there.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, and sometimes it really is just sitting down and writing. And with volume 3, I was getting ready to. I got to the point in the notes in my phone. I'm like, okay, in this particular case, it's a recon mission that went wrong. It's a recon mission that they get back to a rally point and find out it has just turned into a rescue mission. And I was there, and I hit that keystroke, and I said, oh my God, I got an idea. And I did something completely different. Again, this book is different for me. And then boom, I went back to the rescue mission. So for me, sometimes I surprise myself when I'm writing. I really do.
Yeah.
And even getting to that bullet point that you're targeting in that chapter, I've written stuff in there that was like, oh, hey, I didn't know that was going to happen. So
That's so, it's always interesting when it happens. So I mean, like, I was telling Jake this, like, I had started writing Sins of the Assassin, which is the book I'm working on now. But I had started writing that last year, while I was also writing Night of the Vigilante. And I got kind of writer's block. So so what I do is, and this is just kind of, I guess, how my brain works, I take the Zach James approach of where, like, I'll have two or three projects kind of cooking at a time. And then whenever I get bored of one, or whenever I get, like, not necessarily bored, but when I get, like, fatigued with one, I'll to kind of switch around. And so I wound up, as it turns out, like finishing and publishing Night of the Vigilante before Sins of the Assassin.
mm-hmm.
As a result of that, though, I went back and looked at, like, Cincy the Assassin, and I rewrote like big chunks of you know, of the one I'm working on now, Cincy the Assassin, to reflect more of events that had occurred in Night of the Vigilante, because the two books they're separate series, but they're in the same universe. So it's always
Well,
interesting when that happens.
and that was something this morning. Because I've got a side project that I've been asked to be part of, and the character that I'm doing the side project on has just made their appearance in volume 3. And I said, okay,
Yeah.
I gotta go back and work on that too. It's a short project, but I got to get it done. I can't sit and wait because I'm not going to be last minute with this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I've got a couple of those too. When there's short projects like that too, that's always nice, because like I've actually found, since kind of joining the men's adventure, fiction community that you and I are in, I've found out, or I should say I remember, that I'm actually a pretty decent short story writer. And that's not something that like I personally had really like dabbled in much since like junior high, because now like it seems like a lot of the publishers and even self-publishers, they want like bigger books, now. But like I definitely do think that like shorter form writing can be just as impactful. Yeah, working on this side projects is always interesting.
yeah,
So
yeah, and it takes place in the R War universe, so it's going to be. I'm looking forward to
yeah.
cracking in on that a little bit more. I wrote the first page or two maybe, and now I gotta finish it.
Yeah, that's always how those go. Well, also, sir, you're I see you're you're a cigar guy there too. So what's your smoke of choice?
Anything Perdomo. Perdomo cigars was introduced to me. Oh God, they were still a smaller company. You could still buy a Perdomo at the time for under $3. And
Wow.
now, I mean, this guy here was, I think, $9, compared. They got really, really big. They make an outstanding cigar. And
Yeah.
they're often written about in my books too at this point. So,
Yeah, that's always cool when you can do little nods like that.
mhm.
Um yeah, like I do the same. I'm not much of a whiskey guy, although I do like some, but I'm a huge Guinness
Mhm.
guy. Guinness usually ends up like making, little appearances
As
in
far
my
as
book.
beer goes, I will drink Guinness.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not much of a beer guy otherwise. I like my bourbons. Um, had a whiskey or two I rather enjoyed. I was sent a bottle of Writer's Tears Irish whiskey,
I
which
do like
the name of it was funny, and the
yeah.
whiskey was outstanding. So I'm hoping to get some more of that here shortly.
Yeah. I do like bourbon. Four Four Roses.
hmm
So,
I've
which
had
is
friend of mine bought me a bottle recently, Rebel 100. Um, I don't know what the price point on it was, but in my opinion, it puts Four Roses to shame.
yeah. Well, hey,
It outstanding.
yeah. Well, hey, if there are any, whiskey companies or any bourbon companies that want to sponsor the Whitfield Report, email me, hit me up on Twitter, or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
not a bad sponsor to have.
no, no, not at all. And that's only one thing that a lot of Connie podcasters do. But I mean, I definitely think that you know there are plenty of author podcasts out there now.
Oh yeah.
So, um, you mentioned, Jack Carr and Brad Thor being influences. Any other influences, like as far as like movies or anything like that? Your books, from what I've read, kind of like have um kind of like a very punk rock, feel to them, but in a good way. So
Um, I've been reading, like I said, I hit the ground running after reading Jack. Um, I've gotten into, of course, Mark Graney, um, Vince Flynn as well. I actually sought out and hunted down all the hardcovers and am not very far into the series because it's going from one side of the room to the other right now. Still working on a Lee Child book, and of course Jake's new one. Um, the biggest influences, I'm going to be honest with you, when it comes to writing, have been the authors that I've met along the way. Bishop, I don't know if he coined it or what, but the hashtag never quit. And it's really become an attitude of, yeah, I can't quit now, you know.
yeah,
So the authors like yourself, like Zach James, like Jake and Bishop and Stratton, those are the guys who drive me, I think, more than Jack Carr and Brad Thor and Lee Child and so on. Because it's really weird the amount of support that this community has for each other.
yeah. It's very, I mean, and I appreciate being mentioned on that list, but yeah, totally I totally agree with you too. It's also like, for me, like I've been podcasting forever now, like, close to 18 years almost. Um, but I kind of pivoted more towards doing interviews within the last 2 years. And I have to
Mhm.
say, like, the amount of indie authors like yourself, like, Eric Bishop, like Steve Stratton, I've learned a lot from just talking to authors and,
Mhm.
befriending them. And, like I've reached out to a few of the bigger ones, and I've been contacted by by their agents or whatnot, saying that,
Mhm.
oh, well, your podcast isn't necessarily big enough, for so and so to come on. And I understand, but like, that just means that, like, I think, I don't want to say that, like, I don't want to say like I'm a better interviewer than Rogan, because he's a really good interviewer, but I think I am, maybe a better interviewer than some of the other, quote unquote bigger name
Mhm.
podcasts. But I think, I've learned a lot more from the indie authors who I've talked to than perhaps, say, the bigger names. So
I've
it's
learned how
definitely
to
been
tell the story better from the bigger names, but I've learned how to keep that focus, to keep that drive. I shouldn't use the word focus because we already described that as being my worst trait. Uh, but to keep that drive, to keep moving forward.
yeah,
That's such, for me, that's such a big, big thing.
yeah.
The resistance that I got early on with my first book would have probably made anybody think twice, and yet here I am. I'm still going.
What
Um,
what resistance is that, if you don't mind me asking?
I some family members were not as big of fans of my books as I would have thought family would have been. Um,
Yeah,
and I had one friend. Oh, there's too many grammatical errors. I can't read it. Are you shitting me? Really? Um, because you're not reading it for the grammar. You're reading it for the story. You know.
Right.
So there was some stuff like that where it was like, okay, man, do I really want to, put this out there? And then it was when I was at the peak of really the point where I'm like, you know what, I'm going to rip this apart and fix it, make it look, more Jack Car-ish. That I said, you know what, no, put it out there, and I did, and I came away with fans and people wanting the second book and people wanting to see me out and about. Um, and then again, things changed. So I'm taking a different approach now, with the self-publishing. Um, and I'm not going to be traveling to gun shows to get my books out there. I'm going to be hitting up libraries and getting outside my comfort zone and letting people ask me questions. So that'll be different for me.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's, it's good that you have the audience with the, with the gun market. And
Hmm.
by the way, I with you having family members that don't support your book, I mean, I can certainly, I unfortunately can relate to that. Like I, I do I do political commentary on the show a bit, especially on Wednesdays when I do like a more like news and politics. I don't
Hmm.
necessarily I'm not one to necessarily hide my politics per se, but I'm also of the opinion that, hey, I want everyone to read my books, and I'm not going to beat you over. I'm not going to beat you over the head with my political views, but at the same time, they're not in so much politics. It's just I think when you're writing anything, it's impossible not to put your observations, on the world. And I'm very critical of both parties, in
Oh, yes.
my daily life. So of course I'm going to be critical of them. Again, I'm not going to beat people over the head with it, but
Yeah.
um, you know, some people get upset because they think that I'm, you know, they project a lot of what they think onto, me as a writer, and so that's what's kind of frustrating because it's like, well, no, that's not what I had in mind at all, but it's interesting that you translate it that way. I mean, I've got family members who, haven't even like bought a book, but they just want me to give them a copy for free. And it's like, you know, no,
You,
I'm not gonna do that. I'm losing money if I'm doing that.
you want to trash it to everybody. You can go ahead and at least let me make a buck.
Yeah. So, you know, uh, uh, on the flip side though, like I have, people like my mom's been incredibly supportive, and so,
Hmm.
like obviously, you know, she'll get, I love giving her like copies of my books for, Mother's Day and her birthday and whatnot. So,
The
it's
biggest
all,
the biggest support I have gotten is that writers community.
yeah,
Um, and that's I've got some family who buy the books. They don't read them, but they buy them.
yeah,
I've got friends who buy the books, don't read them. So it's the fans. In fact, the second book, in what I do, the second edition will still be dedicated to the fans.
yeah.
So
I
because
actually, I
go
actually
ahead.
don't mind it. I actually don't mind as much if people buy them and don't read them. I mean, I'd like them to, but at this point, I'm also kind of like, well, even if you don't buy it, even if you don't read it, as long as you buy it, I'll still autograph it for you. And
Yep.
although I hope people, because I've done this sub 200 pages thing on purpose because, early on when I was telling people I was writing, they were like, well, I don't have time to read, you know big, like 500-page books, in my schedule. I just don't have time for that. So
Mhm.
that was kind of one of my motivations for, I guess, writing more pulpy, and that
Mhm.
has worked out. So, but yeah, I mean, the writing community, I mean, it's very interesting because, like, I know you and everyone I know in the writing community, I know mostly through, um, the internet and online, and yet
Mhm.
I talk to you guys more somewhat than I do from some of my best friends. I know I all just because they're busy. And I mean, I do consider you guys friends, so as well. So yeah, the writing community is just, great. And that's why I, dedicate a large portion of this podcast to talking to other people in the indie author community as well. So, so yeah, just the community aspect of this is fantastic.
Yeah.
Can't say enough about it. So
No, you really can't. And that's why I did a section in the back of the second edition. Um, check out books by these other great authors, which I think is
yeah,
attached to the email there that I had sent you. And the physical, of course, it's in the physical copies too, and it's a lot of the indie authors I met along the way. So
yeah,
there's not a big New York Times bestseller mentioned at all in the back of that book. So
and it's interesting because now, because like people always ask me what I'm reading, and I always tell them like I'm reading this guy, I'm reading this guy, and they're like, well, I'm reading Richard Maverick right now. I'm reading Jake Widmer. I'm reading Zach James. Well, who are those guys? I've never heard of them, and I'm like, well, you know, I'll be able to say this about you now too. I'm like, well, they're all on my podcast. You know, go listen, go listen to them. They're great, and read their stuff. I read so much indie stuff now. It's a lot better even than some of the stuff I pick up
mhm.
um in the bookstores. Like I love Jack Carr, but I've got to be honest. Like some of Zach James's books, I like my and I've been pretty open about this. I still like Jack, but I feel like his last two books have been kind of lacking a bit compared to the first two,
Mhm.
and that's not necessarily like a knock on him. Maybe just like maybe my tastes are changing, but I also
Yeah.
think maybe maybe he's not as, I mean, he's got so many things going on too that I think when you get to that level, maybe you don't have as much passion for writing as, you
Yeah.
know, I think it could be more of like a business,
Yeah.
thing.
I uh
So,
I got to where the hell was it? God damn it. I haven't read the last two yet. I read it, the last one I read so far was In the Blood, um of his. And In the Blood didn't do it for me the way the first ones did. Um so it's not that I'm reluctant to pick up the next one and read it. It's just that I mean, you see the shelf behind me, there's another shelf across from me. So
yeah,
I've got, that's where all my detective thrillers and murder mysteries are sitting, and the Stephen Kings that I'm collecting for my daughter, who's a big fan of the movie It. So one of these days she's going to want to read all of those. So
do
it's
you,
it's a monster library for somebody who quit reading at the age of 10. So
yeah. Well, the fact that your daughter's into, creepy clowns and whatnot, I don't know about, I don't know about your kid. You know,
yeah,
you know, clowns have always weirded me out, but hey, if she's, you
hey,
know,
we actually just did a haunted prison tour for her birthday. So
cool, cool.
So that's our yearly thing, is to go visit another creepy haunted prison. We did Mansfield last year for a birthday, where they filmed the Shawshank Redemption. And we got nothing really spooky happened. We got one photo that's questionable. But we had done a tour a couple years before, where we had some attachments occur. And that's the prison we just went back to for a birthday, to see if we could see if they remembered us.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
and next year she wants to do an insane asylum. So,
That's yeah, those are always fun. The only one I visited, this isn't like a haunted house, but I about like probably 15 or so years ago now, I was still in high school. We took a family trip to San Francisco, and we
mhm.
we went to Alcatraz.
Oh, I want
And
to go there so bad.
oh, it's really cool, but like also they'll let you go into the cells, some of them. And
Yeah,
when you're in the cells, there's you're not alone. You're not alone
yeah.
necessarily. There's definitely you
The
know
uh, the tour we just did, she stepped into one as the tour guide's talking, and instantly got pain in her stomach, and stepped out and was like, "Oh, Daddy, my stomach hurts," and blah blah blah. And within a minute or two, it stopped hurting.
interesting.
Yeah.
I I'm sure you know of at least John Guarnieri. He's a
Yes.
really good friend of Eric's, and
Yep.
a huge sport of mine. But he I guess he just actually like started doing a television show with some of the other Shinedown guys, where they go and
Yep.
investigate paranormal stuff. I've seen clips on YouTube, and it's really interesting.
I keep trying to get him to come up. Buffalo's got some pretty haunted hot spots too.
Yeah,
So,
I'll have to check that out. I will actually be in New York City in May. So
nice.
yeah.
Nice. New York City
Um
is about 8 hours from me, 7.5, 8 hours from where I'm at in New York.
yeah, you're like upstate,
Yep. Yep.
or
Just south of Niagara Falls.
interesting.
So,
So is it still winter up there? I have to ask.
2 days ago it was. I'm not even kidding when I say that. And today I was in shorts and a t-shirt.
Yeah, that's that's how it goes.
Two days
Well,
ago I was in my winter coat because there was a little bit of snow, and it was freezing. It was like 38 degrees, and today it was around 70.
yeah, that's exactly how it used to be in Colorado, where I grew up too.
Mm,
Um, and and now I live in Florida, where it's nice most of the year. January and
yeah,
February we get some funky weather, but like now it's perfect right now.
yeah.
So
I'm too fat for hot weather.
I have the opposite problem. I'm too skinny for cold. So it works out. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, what else do you have on the docket in the future for
Um,
right now?
for right now, finishing up volume 3, getting some of the ideas I've had for volume 4 written down, and working on this collaboration project, and getting that done. That's, as of right now, the collaboration project is scheduled for release. We're supposed to have it done by the end of summer, for a release date in early 26.
Yeah, those are always interesting.
Yeah. And that hoping to have art copies of Volume 3 in June, which means I got a lot of shit to catch up on. Um,
Oh, yeah,
but
I know how that goes.
I've had a lot of movement with ideas for where the book's headed, and filling in some, hey, I want to do this, but and then it's as you're writing it, it's like, oh, okay, I did it, yay, because you found that spot to put it. So much
Yeah,
beyond that, the immediate more query letters for Meet the Monster. Again, been focused on Volume 3 and the giveaway for Volume 1, and the start of the giveaway for Volume 2 is going to be happening here shortly. And getting second edition uploaded and ready to go, and just did the cover reveal for that. So,
yeah.
but that's
Well,
it for the immediate future.
that's the other good thing of the writing community too, is there are quite a number of people who I feel like I can bounce ideas off of, and they're honest with me in terms of, yeah, this is a really good idea, or no, this isn't so much a good idea.
Yeah,
Or, what I've been getting a lot lately is, that's a great idea. I'm not sure it'll necessarily work for this, but it might work for that
for
other
something later. Yeah,
project you've got going. So, which is nice as well. So,
well, little
well,
one wants to say hi to the world. Pop in and say hi.
sure, sure. Hey there. But anyway, well, I don't want to keep you too much longer, sir. I really appreciate your time, but where can people find you and find your projects and whatnot?
R Maverick Books on Facebook, or I'm sorry, on X and Instagram, and Richard Maverick Books on Facebook right now. I don't have a website. I linked up with an old friend from high school this past week, and she's going to help me get into the realm of having my own website soon. So,
Yeah, I don't really have a website either. So, I'm kind of working on that too. I had
mhm,
one, and then I let the domain expire.
mhm.
Now I'm thinking of, like, getting the app going again. Maybe if it'll be worth it. So, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'd like to do something with a newsletter and a blog and stuff like
Yeah,
that, just to update people kind of daily. I try to do, like on Instagram, I post to my story all the time how many words I got wrote in the last day, or this morning was 629 words first thing this morning. So,
yeah.
you know,
Well, I mean, I'd certainly be, happy to help with any like social media and website stuff. That's kind of my jam. So feel free to, reach out to me, and I know other people who would love to help as well. So, but
yeah,
I'll be sure to, link all your stuff in the show notes for people who, want to check your stuff out. So, and
I appreciate that.
any final thoughts that you just want to, put out there? So,
Again, thank you for having me on. It means the world to me to be on, to get the books out there. So,
so well, folks, go and check out the Owl War series. Richard does a fantastic job of writing them, and also uh very inspirational too, as far as he's overcome a lot of hurdles, as we all have in the indie author community. And I think if there's one thing I think we both agree on, it you know it's not always easy to pursue this, but it is worth it. And just don't give up on your
yep,
pursuits.
never quit.
So yeah, never quit, as Eric likes to say. Alrighty, folks. Well, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I want to thank Richard for coming on, and I really appreciate your time, sir. And
Thank you.
we will see you folks on the Whitfield Report Wednesday show. So until then, take care, God bless, and we'll see you on the next episode.
The right to offend is not some pesky little part of freedom of speech that we have to put up with. It is the heart and soul and lungs of freedom of speech. It is the coursing lifeblood of human progress. It is the instigator of liberty and modernity and science and understanding. What a laughing stock today's student leaders are, that they can so casually dismiss the right to be offensive without realizing that their lovely, enlightened lives are the gift of individuals who gave offense. Offensiveness is not just something we have to begrudgingly accept. Offensiveness is the motor of human progress.
Thank you for watching the Whitfield Report live on the Right to Offend Media Network. Make sure to check out Sam's books on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle. You can follow Sam on X at SamW_NGC and the Right to Offend Media Network at RTO Media. Like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. And until next time, God bless, God save this great nation. God, freedom, legacy, in that order.